The morning lights brightened across the corridors of Aegis 9 in a slow upward sweep, simulating dawn over a ship permanently suspended between stars. Myra Hale had already been awake long before the shift cycle began. She walked with measured steps, though each movement required deliberate control to keep the small, warm bundle beneath her hoodie from squirming into view. 3 tiny sets of claws pressed lightly against her ribs, and soft breathing vibrated through her clothing as the creatures nestled in closer, seeking warmth. Myra kept one hand on her pocket, pretending to fidget with a non-existent data tab. She had smuggled wildlife before, but never on a Union patrol vessel where every bulkhead pulsed with sensors calibrated to detect anything larger than a beetle. Still, she trusted her instincts more than the regulations hovering over her shoulder since the moment she boarded the ship. The cubs were far too young to be left behind on Alarian 5's burning plains. No protocol deserved priority over survival, especially not theirs. The overhead speakers chimed gently as the crew prepared to begin their rotations. Myra quickened her steps. If she reached the lab before anyone noticed the faint heat signatures under her hoodie, she could adjust the scanners to avoid flagging the creatures as threats. She was halfway through the central passage when the ship abruptly lurched into a higher state of alert. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. A piercing alert tore through the hallway. BO signal anomaly detected. Category: infant roar. Myra froze. The cubs stirred at the sudden noise. One let out a small, half-formed yawn. The sound was no louder than a kitten's sigh, yet it reverberated through the sensors like a seismic tremor. She braced herself as the alarm intensified. Doors snapped open along the hall. Patrol officers spilled out, boots striking metal with sharp precision. 2 Zelthari guards raised their scanners and swept the area methodically. Their green skin shifted through darker shades as tension climbed. Lieutenant Caro stumbled from the adjacent chamber, hair disheveled, face pale. "What in the stars was that?" he blurted, staring wildly around. Before Myra could slip away, a broader shadow cut through the confusion. Commander Dravik Torvar advanced with rigid steps, the authoritative gloom of his presence settling over the crew. His long, angular features and slitted yellow eyes made even veteran officers straighten. "Lock down this passage," Dravik ordered. "The signal originated from this sector." Myra lowered her head slightly, hoping anonymity might outweigh suspicion. It did not. Dravik's gaze flicked toward her like a targeting beam. "You," he said. "Step forward." She obeyed. Every movement was careful. The cubs pressed tighter against her as if sensing danger in the air. Dravik circled her slowly. "Your biometric output is elevated." "Morning nerves," Myra answered, keeping her tone easy. "I haven't had caffeine yet." "Your heart rate suggests concealment," Dravik replied without inflection. "State your purpose in this corridor." "Heading to the xenobiology lab." She maintained eye contact. "Routine analysis requests." Caro leaned closer to her. "Myra, that wasn't you making that noise, right?" His voice quivered in a half-joking, half-terrified whisper. Before she could reply, another faint yawn pulsed under her hoodie. This time, the middle cub arched its tiny body, pushing against the zipper. A soft rumble escaped, delicate yet resonant enough to reach nearby ears. Caro's eyes widened. "Ah, Commander." Dravik raised a hand for silence. "Hale. Unzip the hoodie." Myra's pulse spiked. She hesitated for less than a second, and that moment alone confirmed Dravik's suspicion. "Now," he said. She sighed softly. "Please don't overreact." With a gentle tug, she pulled the zipper down halfway. Immediately, 3 small heads emerged, round eyes shining, patterned fur shimmering under the corridor lights. One cub blinked at Dravik and gave another barely audible roar that sounded more like a squeaky hiccup. Caro staggered backward. No, they can't be." Dravik stiffened, his voice dropping to a low register. "Valka cubs." Gasps rippled down the hall. A few officers instinctively stepped back, hands drifting to their weapons. Myra shielded the cubs with one arm. "They're infants. Harmless. I found them abandoned inside a collapsed smuggling den on Alarian 5. They would have died without intervention." Dravik's jaw tightened. You brought a classified species aboard this vessel without clearance. I brought endangered babies who posed no threat, she shot back. There was no time to file requests. One roar from an adult Valka can shatter reinforced plating. Dravik's tone remained controlled, yet each word carried iron. Their presence on this ship endangers all personnel. They're not adults, Myra insisted. These three barely have their eyes open. They can't harm anyone. Caro tried to soften the tension. Commander, they're tiny. I mean, kind of cute, actually. Dravik didn't break focus. Cut off access to all non-essential sectors. Contain this corridor. He signaled 2 guards. Escort Hale and the creatures to quarantine. Myra pulled the hoodie closer. They're stressed already. Moving them abruptly will terrify them. Your assessment is not relevant, Dravik said. Protocol dictates immediate evaluation. Myra inhaled slowly. She had expected confrontation, but not this swiftly. At least allow me to bring them to the xenobiology lab. That's where the proper containment equipment is. Dravik studied her, reading the defiance beneath her calm exterior. No. Quarantine. For what reason? Their biosigns barely register. The Union's last documented encounter with Valka ended in catastrophic casualties. That was centuries ago, Myra countered. And those were adults with engineered aggression. These cubs don't share that nature. You presume knowledge you do not possess. She met his stare steadily. Then give me 24 hours to prove it. Caro looked between them. Commander, she might be right. If the cubs are different. I will not jeopardize this vessel on speculation. Dravik's voice cut through the corridor. Yet he paused, gaze narrowing on the smallest cub curled against Myra's chest. Its tiny chest rose and fell in soft, steady rhythm. The creature yawned once more, baring miniature teeth no larger than a grain of rice. Something in Dravik's expression shifted, barely noticeable, but present. A flicker of calculation, not fear. Finally, he said, 24 hours. You will analyze them under full supervision. If they demonstrate even minimal threat capability, they will be terminated. Myra exhaled, relief and determination intertwining. I'll show you they're safe. Dravik gestured to the guards. Accompany her. Ensure no deviation from authorized routes. As Myra walked toward the lab with the cubs tucked securely inside her hoodie, Caro whispered, Myra, if anyone can convince him, it's you. Just don't let them yawn too loudly. She smiled faintly. They can't help it. Behind her, Dravik watched without blinking, already calculating contingency plans. He had seen enough anomalies in his lifetime to know that the smallest creatures could invite the greatest chaos. And Myra, clutching the cubs close, silently vowed she would not let fear dictate their fate. The clock had begun. The xenobiology lab brightened as Myra entered with 2 guards trailing closely behind her. The cubs had settled again, their soft breaths warming the inside of her hoodie. The moment the door sealed, Myra moved straight to the central examination table. She adjusted the environmental controls to mimic the temperature they were accustomed to on Ilarion 5. The guards remained by the doorway, rigid and silent. Myra Hale, begin your authorized analysis, one of them stated. His voice sounded rehearsed, almost uncomfortable with the formality. Myra nodded without acknowledging the stiffness. She gently set the cubs down on a padded surface. They blinked under the bright lights, their small bodies curling instinctively toward each other. One nuzzled her wrist, seeking reassurance. She stroked it lightly. It's all right, she whispered. Just a scan. She activated the recorder and began her log. Subject group, Valka neonates, approximately 3 weeks old. Initial behavior, cooperative, stress minimal when handled gently. She positioned the scanner above them. Running biosymmetry analysis. The holographic projection bloomed to life. The cub's skeletal structures appeared, delicate frames, undeveloped musculature, and tiny vocal chambers incapable of producing anything remotely hazardous. She zoomed in on the laryngeal system. The data surpassed her expectations. Interesting, she murmured. One guard stepped closer, wary. Define interesting. Their raw glands aren't active. They couldn't generate a hostile resonance if they tried. They triggered the ship's alarm. Myra pointed to the reading. Because the ship's sensors are keyed to detect the frequency signature of adult Valka. These cubs only produced a mild vibration amplified by the miscalibrated system. It's a false positive. Before the guard could comment, the lab doors slid open. Commander Dravik entered, accompanied by a Zeltharai technician carrying a portable screen. Dravik's gaze fixed immediately on the projection. Explain your findings, he said. Myra kept her voice steady. Their vocal anatomy isn't capable of generating destructive sound. Their glands are dormant. The alarm was an error. Dravik reviewed the holographic data. Dormant glands do not preclude future activation. Of course not, Myra agreed. But we aren't dealing with future adults. We're dealing with tiny creatures barely surviving dehydration when I found them. Whatever threat the Union recorded in history wasn't inherent. It was engineered. The technician exchanged a quick glance with Dravik. Myra caught it. You've seen the old reports, she continued. The aggression in adult Valka didn't originate naturally. It was induced. Their creators weaponized them. Dravik gave no immediate response. Instead, he tapped his wrist console. A large screen on the lab wall activated, displaying archived footage. The recording showed an adult Valka roaring at a fortified barrier. The structure shattered instantly. Troops collapsed as shockwaves rippled across the ground. The guards stiffened, as if confronting a ghost carved from the past. Dravik folded his hands behind his back. This is the nature of the species you claim to understand. Myra approached the screen calmly. This is the nature forced upon them. I'm telling you these cubs won't grow into what you fear without external modification. Dravik turned to her sharply. Your belief does not override centuries of caution. It's not belief, Myra said. It's biology. She gestured toward the hologram. Look at their neural activity. No aggression markers. No adrenal surge. Their genetics lack the weaponization signature entirely. Someone altered the adult Valka generations ago. These cubs never inherited that design. Dravik stared at the projection a long moment, though his expression betrayed nothing. The technician broke the silence. Commander, her analysis appears accurate. These neonates carry no trace of the modification. Dravik ignored him. His attention remained on Myra. If that is true, why were they hidden inside a smuggler's den? Because smugglers profit from rarity, she answered. The Valka were believed extinct. Anyone who found survivors would treat them like contraband. They were abandoned when the raid hit. Dravik's eyes narrowed slightly. You retrieved them without authorization. Because authorization would have come too late, Myra said. They were dying. One cub pawed the air, letting out a gentle trill. Dravik's gaze flicked toward it. Brief, almost imperceptible, but present enough for Myra to notice something shift in his stance. A chime rang from the console. Myra checked the results. Their metabolic patterns stabilized. Hydration levels rising. Stress indicators decreasing. She allowed herself a thin smile. They're responding well. Dravik stepped closer to the table. The cubs instinctively huddled behind Myra's hand. He watched them, unmoving. Valka are classified as Tier 7 biological anomalies. Any unauthorized possession, transport, or concealment carries severe penalties. Myra met his gaze squarely. I'm aware of the regulations. Then explain why you chose to violate them. Because life matters more than protocol, she said quietly. Dravik held her stare. Compassion does not guarantee safety. No, she replied. But fear doesn't guarantee wisdom. For the first time, Dravik seemed taken aback, not outwardly, but in a subtle tightening of his posture. Before he could respond, a sharp chirp came from the wall console. A new alert scrolled across the display. Intermittent frequency spikes detected. Source unconfirmed. Myra frowned. That wasn't from the cubs. Their readouts are stable. Dravik tapped his wrist link. Bridge, report. A voice replied, crackling through the comms. Residual signatures matching Valka resonance detected beyond the ship. It's faint, Commander. Myra stiffened. Outside the ship? Yes, the bridge replied. Approximately 11 kilometers off our port side. Could be interference, but... Continue monitoring, Dravik ordered. The channel closed. The room fell quiet. Myra looked at Dravik. That isn't from them. They can't produce anything detectable at that range. Dravik didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted toward the cubs, then back to her. You have 23 hours remaining, he said at last. Demonstrate conclusively that they pose no risk. If the scans continue to identify external resonance, the investigation will expand, and the cubs will fall under Union jurisdiction. Myra felt a cold knot form in her stomach. If Union investigators boarded, the cubs would be seized instantly. She had to prove everything before that happened. Dravik turned to leave. Just before the doors parted, the smallest cub let out a soft chirp, almost like a plea. Dravik paused briefly, then stepped into the hallway without looking back. The doors sealed. Myra exhaled slowly. She stroked the cubs' heads. We don't have much time, she whispered. And someone, or something, is sending signals we can't ignore. The cubs nestled close, sensing her tension. The day had begun with a false alarm. But now, something real was stirring beyond the hull of Aegis 9. And Myra had no intention of letting anyone, or anything, take these creatures from her. The xenobiology lab dimmed as the overhead lights shifted into diagnostic mode, bathing the room in a soft blue glow. Myra kept her eyes on the console as new readings streamed across the display. The cubs slept peacefully in their padded enclosure, unaffected by the ship's tightening atmosphere. Their tiny chests rose with steady rhythm, unaware that the ship sensors were capturing faint signals from something beyond the hull. Myra isolated the frequency again. It was not a roar. It was sharper, thinner, carrying a predatory cadence. She enhanced the waveform and examined its structure. Whatever produced, it was far larger than a Valka neonate. Its harmonic signature belonged to a creature evolved, or engineered, to hunt. A shiver crept along her spine. She activated the comm bridge. This is Hale. I need confirmation on the external resonance. Is it persistent? A moment passed before Lieutenant Caro's voice answered. Myra, it's still present. Strength fluctuating, but stable enough to track. Direction. Locked on port. Distance closing slowly. Myra stepped away from the console. Closing. Yes, Caro said. It's not drifting. It's approaching. Before Myra could respond, the lab doors slid open. Commander Dravik entered with deliberate purpose. His guards remained in the hallway. He approached the workstation, eyes sweeping across the data. Explain the new signal, he said. It isn't originating from the cubs, Myra replied. The structure doesn't match their biology. Dravik studied the waveform projected above the console. Predatory architecture. Myra nodded. I've seen similar patterns in the archives. Ilarian 5 records mention an apex species believed extinct after the collapse of the Valka population. They hunted the adults aggressively. Designation? Dravik asked. No confirmed label. Only fragmented reports. But this resonance matches those descriptions. Dravik's gaze darkened. If a predator capable of eliminating adult Valka is closing in on this vessel, protocol demands immediate response. Myra stepped between him and the cub's enclosure. They're neonates. They don't draw predators intentionally. Intent is irrelevant, Dravik said. If their presence attracts hostile life forms, the threat escalates. They're not a beacon, she countered. Your sensors picked up interference because the predator broadcasts a tracking hum. It's something they evolved to locate their prey. The cubs didn't emit anything. Dravik studied her for several seconds. Assumptions? No, Myra said firmly. This reads like a hunting pulse. It bounces off potential prey and feeds directional data back to the source. The cubs are reacting to it. He glanced at the enclosure. The middle cub stirred, letting out a faint trill, almost like a confused murmur. It pressed closer to its siblings, small ears twitching. Myra leaned in. See? They're sensing something. Their neural readings show elevated awareness. That proves nothing about their involvement, Dravik said. It proves they're threatened, Myra insisted. Whatever is out there is hunting. Dravik moved closer to the console. Bridge, he called, activating his wrist link, display external visuals. A holographic projection flickered into existence above the workstation, a magnified rendering of the void outside Aegis 9. The stars shimmered across the dark expanse. Then, slowly, something materialized, an indistinct silhouette drifting like a shadow peeled from the night. Caro's voice came through the comm again. Commander, the signal source is now 9 kilometers out. We're attempting spectral breakdown. The projection sharpened. A long, angular shape emerged, organic yet metallic, as if grown rather than built. Jagged fins extended along its sides, pulsing faintly with bioluminescent veins. Its movement was deliberate, almost serpentine. Myra's breath caught. That's a predator-class lifeform. It's alive. Dravik's expression hardened. All hands prepare for containment. Arm defensive systems. You can't engage it, Myra said quickly. If it's hunting, aggression will draw it closer. Remaining passive invites attack, Dravik replied. It's tracking something it believes is nearby, she said. If you open fire, it will identify this ship as a threat and respond. Dravik lowered his wrist link. If your creatures caused this. They didn't, Myra said sharply. But they may be able to detect more than our sensors. He regarded her again, weighing the possibility. She pointed at the cubs. Their species survived because they adapted. Adults were engineered, but the original Valka evolved keen harmonic senses. If these cubs inherited even a fragment of that trait, they might warn us of the predator's next move. Dravik's silence stretched. Finally, he said, demonstrate. Myra lowered the environmental controls to allow external resonances to bleed through subtly. The cubs lifted their heads in unison. Their pupils dilated, bodies tensing slightly. A low vibration passed through the ship, barely perceptible. The smallest cub whimpered. The center cub released a soft, quivering note, higher than before, almost musical. Myra's eyes widened. They're reacting to frequency changes ahead of sensor detection. Caro's voice burst over the comm. Commander! New spike. The predator accelerated. Dravik turned sharply to Myra. How much warning do they provide? Enough, she answered. Their reaction precedes each shift. They can sense its intention. Another tremor passed. The cubs pressed against one another, emitting distressed chirps. Myra looked at Dravik. You need them. Dravik exhaled slowly, the closest thing Myra had ever seen to resignation. Bridge, adjust course minimally as Hale instructs. Myra examined the cub's behavior. As the predator advanced, their harmonic notes altered subtly, higher pitch when danger intensified, lower when distance increased. She synchronized the ship's evasive maneuvers with the cub's responses. Bank right, she said. 2 degrees only. Aegis 9 shifted. The cub's tension eased slightly. Hold steady. Caro's voice returned. Predator path altered. It's circling. Myra focused on the rhythm of their chirps. It's assessing. Keep drifting away slowly. Minutes passed. The cubs settled again, though their eyes remained alert. The external silhouette dimmed until only a faint glimmer remained. Then the signal vanished. Caro's voice sounded relieved. Commander, it's gone. Myra stroked the cubs gently. They guided us out of its path. Dravik stared at the neonates through the enclosure. Something unreadable crossed his expression, an unfamiliar mixture of doubt, recognition, and reluctant acknowledgement. They did not act out of aggression, Myra said. They acted out of instinct. They helped. Dravik held her gaze. This changes the assessment. But it does not remove risk. It changes everything, she replied. They're not a threat. They're a warning system. And if predators survived extinction elsewhere, we need them more than ever. Dravik turned toward the doors. Prepare a formal report. I will review it. He paused before exiting. Hale, your timeline remains unchanged. But your findings will determine whether the Union intervenes. When the doors finally shut, Myra released a breath she had been holding since the predator appeared. The cubs curled together, exhausted from strain. She whispered softly, "You just saved us." But the weight in her chest lingered. The predator had not retreated out of fear. It had withdrawn because it sensed something else. Something waiting beyond the reach of their senses. And the cubs were the only beings who could detect it. The next cycle began under a strained quiet. The ship's artificial dawn rose, but no one treated it as morning. Every deck hummed with subtle unease. Engineers ran silent diagnostics. Patrol teams moved with sharpened focus. Even the ambient air felt taut, as if the hull itself remembered the shadow that had drifted near the ship during the night. Myra entered the command deck with the cubs secured inside a soft containment cradle strapped to her chest. Their presence drew immediate attention. Officers shifted aside, unsure whether to salute her or avoid her completely. She offered none of them more than a brief nod. Her attention remained fixed on the main display where a ghostly outline floated, residual traces of the predator's last known position. Dravik stood before the screen, posture as rigid as reinforced alloy. His expression revealed nothing except deep calculation. When he heard Myra approach, he turned slightly. "You brought them here," he said. "They warned us once. They can do so again," Myra answered. "You need real-time sensing." Dravik's gaze traveled to the cradle. The cubs peeked out cautiously. Their small eyes reflected the glowing projection, mirroring the tension in the room. "We do not know whether the creature will return," Dravik said. "It didn't vanish," Myra replied. "It retreated." "For what purpose?" "To wait," she said quietly. "Predators of that scale don't attack blind. They measure their prey." Dravik studied her for a long moment. "You believe it will strike?" "I believe it's circling until it finds advantage." A comm officer turned from his station. "Commander, long-range sensors show flickering resonance patterns. Very faint. Same harmonic structure as last night." The deck stiffened. Dravik faced the screen again. "Trajectory?" "Uncertain," the officer said. "It keeps fading." Myra shifted her attention to the cubs. The smallest one stirred uneasily. The middle cub pressed closer to her chest, issuing a soft, trembling note. "They feel it," she whispered. Dravik heard. "Confirm it." Myra knelt by the console and set the cradle on the diagnostic pad. The cubs lifted their heads in unison. A gentle harmonic sequence rose from their throats, layered tones forming a vibration that resonated across the sensors. Data spikes erupted instantly on the monitor. Caro leaned forward from his station. "Commander, the cubs detected something before our systems did." Dravik's jaw tightened. "Bridge, compile the resonance overlay." The predator outline reappeared, refined by the cub's input. A narrow arc traced its movement, slow, deliberate, hiding at the edge of their range. Myra met Dravik's eyes. "It's stalking." The ship trembled slightly as thrusters adjusted. Officers waited for orders, anticipation cutting through the silence. Dravik turned to Myra. "Guide us." She moved to the central console. "Small directional shifts only. If we flee too quickly, it interprets panic. If we freeze, it advances. We need to appear unaware." Dravik issued commands. "Helm, adjust course by 1 degree starboard. Maintain low drift. No sudden changes." The room moved with precision. The ship shifted. The cubs relaxed marginally, though their gazes remained fixed in the same direction, toward the approaching danger. Minutes passed. Then everything changed. A flare burst across the display, sharp, violent, unmistakable. The predator accelerated. Its fins expanded, bioluminescence intensifying as it cut through the darkness with purpose. The cubs reacted instantly. Their harmonics spiked to frantic pitches, overlapping into a resonant warning. Caro shouted, "It's charging!" Myra grabbed the cradle. Bank left now. Dravik didn't hesitate. Helm, execute. The ship swung sharply. Energy rippled across the hull as the predator's resonance wave skimmed past them. The deck lights flickered. Officers held onto their stations. Myra steadied the cubs. "It's testing our evasion. If it pins us down, we're finished." Dravik adjusted his stance. "Options. Break its rhythm," Myra said. "Predators commit when predictability forms. Keep altering course based on cub feedback." The room erupted into coordinated movement. Each harmonic pulse from the cubs informed the next adjustment. Myra translated their sounds quickly, giving Dravik precise angles and timing. The ship glided like a dancer, avoiding the sweep of a massive, unseen blade. Another tremor hit, lighter this time. The cub's distress peaked, then softened. Caro glanced at the board. "Commander, it's falling back." Dravik frowned. "Explain." Myra watched the cubs. Their harmonics shifted into a lower, steadier hum. "It's reassessing. Our evasions disrupted its confidence." Caro looked relieved. "So it's leaving?" Myra shook her head. "Not yet." A deep vibration rolled through the hull, the kind that felt born from something ancient. The predator reappeared on the display, closer than before. Too close. Dravik's voice cut through the rising panic. "All crew brace for impact." But the impact never came. Instead, the predator halted abruptly. Its bioluminescence dimmed. Its motion froze. The cubs began to sing. Not a warning. Not distress. A harmonic resonance, steady, layered, hauntingly beautiful. The sound filled the deck, vibrating through metal, consoles, and breath. It wasn't loud, it was precise. The tones aligned into a frequency that rippled through the void. The predator responded, its fins lowering, its shape easing into a slow drift. It wasn't retreating out of fear. It was responding to recognition. Myra felt the shift immediately. They're communicating. The cubs aren't prey. They're kin. Dravik watched the creature, expression unreadable. "Explain." "Predators didn't exterminate the Valka," Myra said softly. "They regulated them. Balanced them. The adult Valka that destroyed colonies were engineered abominations. The predators hunted those, because those weren't natural. But the cubs are." Caro stared. "So they're allies." "Co-evolved," Myra replied. "Two species tied through resonance." The predator emitted a low returning pulse, gentle, almost respectful. Then it drifted backward, wings folding gracefully. The cub's song faded as the creature vanished from the sensors entirely. Silence settled over the command deck. Dravik faced Myra. For once, the rigid lines of his expression softened. "Your creatures prevented an attack that would have crippled us." "They aren't mine," Myra said quietly. "They're survivors." He looked at the cubs again. "The Union must revise classification. Effective immediately, these neonates are under protection. You will serve as their scientific liaison." Myra blinked. "You're serious?" "Yes," he said. "Your findings altered our understanding. And your actions ensured the safety of this vessel." Caro exhaled loudly. Finally, something good. A slight sound came from the cradle. The smallest cub yawned, long, soft, innocent. The ship's alarm blared instantly. Infant roar detected. Officers jumped. Caro groaned. "Not again." Myra pressed her palm over the sensor. "Cancel alarm." The cub blinked and nestled back into her coat. For the first time since she met him, Myra saw Dravik suppress a smile. She lifted the cradle gently. "Let's get you three home." Yet even as she turned, she sensed a new certainty settle on the ship. Humanity wasn't feared because it was dangerous. Humanity was feared because it protected what others abandoned. And the galaxy had finally noticed. ChatGPT can Mac.